This weekend, Joe Biden shared that he's battling an aggressive form of prostate cancer. And while most of the country responded with basic human decency, Donald Trump Jr., whom called Donnie, took it as his cue to be the most vile version of himself, which is really, really saying something. And it's something with which he has a great deal of familiarity. ABC News has more here on Biden's diagnosis.
Former President Joe Biden announcing he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. In a statement, his office announcing Biden was seen last week for a new finding of a prostate nodule after experiencing increasing urinary symptoms. On Friday, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which has spread to his bones. The cancer, characterized with a Gleason score of 9, which medical experts say indicates the cancer cells are likely to grow and spread rapidly. His office noting while this represents a more aggressive form of the disease, the cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, which allows for effective management.
People across the political spectrum offered Joe Biden support, but Donnie, constantly desperate for his father's approval, and a Fox Chiron decided to use Biden's news as a chance to just spew out one of the most ridiculous and repulsive takes imaginable. He shared a conspiracy theory and added this quote, "What I want to know is how did Dr. Jill Biden miss stage 5 metastatic cancer, or is this yet another cover up?" Unquote. Okay, first of all, moron, Dr. Jill Biden is not that kind of doctor. She has a doctorate in education. She's not a medical doctor of any kind, and she's certainly not an oncologist. Secondly, there's no such thing as stage 5 cancer. And whether or not Jill Biden knew what was going on, do not understand why she would share the news with idiots like you. I have a doctorate, um, but I have a PhD in clinical psychology. And even when I'm talking about things psychological, there are certain people who cannot be my patients or could not. I don't practice anymore, but when I was, there are certain people, for example, those related to me, who could never be my patients. Also, I understand what diagnosis is. It is not just a judgment call, it is a process. It is a lengthy, lengthy process. And Jill Biden, regardless of whether or not she's a medical doctor, would have no business going through that process with her husband. But of course, Donnie is not intelligent enough to understand these things, and he wouldn't care anyway, because his entire reason for being seems to be making a fool of himself to such an extent that Donald might, perhaps someday, give him some tiny bit of attention. Of course, the backlash against Donnie's grotesque and inappropriate comments was bipartisan. After the son of the sitting president of the United States not just signed off on, but amplified a MAGA conspiracy theory about the former president, someone who just revealed he has an incredibly serious cancer diagnosis. Meghan McCain, who is the daughter of late Republican Senator John McCain, tweeted in part, quote, "I don't want to hear anything else about Biden's health cover-up, tell-alls, interviews with staff, etc. Let the Biden family be in peace right now. This is all just so sad and imprudent," unquote. Now, as for Meghan McCain, she knows wherever she speaks because her father had cancer and was very sick at certain points in his life. And she understands the value of keeping such things as private as humanly possible, even for somebody with higher profile as a senator or a former president. There is very little else about which I would want to hear anything from Meghan McCain. But in this case, yes, she does have information that is useful to the rest of us. Even Piers Morgan found his Donnie's behavior repulsive and posted, quote, "I'm going to block anyone I see, and there's already a lot of this vile crap flying around, mocking, celebrating, or playing partisan politics with Joe Biden's health news. The man has served his country for 50 years and is fighting for his life. Show some bloody respect," unquote. Now, anybody who's been paying attention or knows anything about Donnie knows that he's not just tasteless, but he's just a disgraceful excuse for a human being. And yet, because of his proximity to Donald, who is only has the platform he has because he's in the Oval Office, we have to listen to this crap because again, he's the son of the sitting president. Of course, it's not as if he's doing anything outside of the bounds of anybody else in the Trump regime. All of the enablers and sycophants are well versed in dispensing cruelty, disinformation. All of them seem to be utterly devoid of humanity, unless, of course, something terrible happens to them or people in their orbit. Before we go on, just remember that we here at Mary Trump Media are not corporate media. We don't bend the knee ever, and we will never be for sale. We expose the lies the Trump regime wants buried, and independent media, which is what we are, survives because of you. So please like and share our videos and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Donnie's grotesquely inappropriate attack landed especially hard because it underscores just how little people in the Trump regime actually value human life at all. Um, they should know that cancer isn't partisan. It's a very personal thing. And it seems like it touches every single family at one point or another. And right now, the Trump regime is actively making the fight against cancer harder, if you could imagine. One viral tweet summed it up. Quote, if you're celebrating the terminal illness of a former president, just remember cancer doesn't discriminate. It could be you or your family member next. Your current president made sure a cure won't happen from America, and millions of you might not have health care. Ghouls, unquote. So let's keep this in mind. Donald and the Trump regime have already cut $2.7 billion in funding for the National Institutes of Health. And now the Republicans' 2026 budget proposal includes another $18 billion in proposed cuts to the agency. This is the largest public funder of cancer research in the world. The budget slashes the Department of Health and Human Services by 26.2%. It includes a staggering 37% cut to the National Institutes of Health, and it eliminates the CDC's Division of Cancer Prevention and Control, which has provided over 16 million screenings to more than 6 million people. The American Cancer Society warned that this would roll back our national progress by decades, wiping out registries that track cancer trends, screening programs that detect early stage illness, and research initiatives that have helped 18 million Americans survive. Is this what everybody voted for? I'm pretty sure the answer to that question is emphatically no. Since February, NIH has already begun gutting cancer research grants. Layoffs have disrupted trials midstream. Cost caps have threatened the financial viability of entire labs. As oncologist Jalal Beg put it, quote, without this research, many potential insights and treatments needed to propel oncology forward will never be realized, unquote. Instead of reversing course, because that is just something of which he's characterologically incapable, Donald wants to make all of this worse. His so-called big beautiful bill is barreling through the House of Representatives, and which is, as you know, in control of the Republicans, and it would make the healthcare crisis permanent. It is essentially a billionaire tax break disguised as legislation paid for by cutting the following: Medicaid, which 70 million Americans rely on; SNAP, which feeds 41 million people, including children; National Institutes of Health, which drive almost every breakthrough in cancer research. So let's be very clear here. 1 in 5 Americans use Medicaid. It covers 60% of nursing home residents, and 40% of children in the United States are also covered. To the Trump regime, all of this is considered waste. To the rest of us, it's life or death. Our very own Wajahad Ali wrote an excellent Substack about this moment. His daughter is a stage 4 cancer survivor. Her liver transplant saved her life, but her care, it was paid for in large part through GoFundMe. In America, the richest nation in the world, he had to get donations from strangers in order to pay for the vast bulk of his daughter's desperately needed health care. Waj wrote in part, quote, as corporate media remains obsessed with Joe Biden's mental acuity while glossing over Donald's obesity and naps during public events, I hope they spend some airtime on MAGA's plans to make cancer and death great again. And that does indeed seem to be the main agenda of the Trump regime. They are making cuts that are both indiscriminate and deeply calculated to hamper our ability to combat potentially fatal illnesses, to get rid of vaccines that prevent the spread of highly communicable but preventable diseases. They do not seem to want Americans to be healthier. They seem to be more interested in keeping us weak and poor and sick and afraid. So, what is all of this for? Well, fascist Republicans can't even seem to decide on that. Some want to protect Medicaid in order to avoid electoral backlash, not, of course, because they care about the impact it will have on their constituents who are actual human beings. Others, the so called fiscal hawks, want Medicaid gone entirely. Hardliners like Representative Chip Roy of Texas don't think the bill cuts enough spending and wouldn't lower the deficit quickly enough. He complained that changes to Medicaid, like a new work requirement, wouldn't kick in until 2029. Yes, yes, you sick people, you should have to work in order to get your benefits. Also, by the way, Representative Chip Roy has world class health insurance thanks to his government job that taxpayers pay for. Now, Senate Republicans are trying to break this bill apart because even they cannot handle the idea of the backlash they will receive if it passes. Moderates are pushing to protect Medicaid, while in the Senate, fiscal hawks like Ron Johnson call the cuts fake and say the bill doesn't go far enough. Mike Lee and Rick Scott plan to vote no. Others want to pass the border and tax cuts first and leave the rest to fight over later, because if nothing else, Senate Republicans are quite good at kicking the can down the road when it suits them. Meanwhile, Donald's allies are still clinging to the idea that it can all pass as one giant package, but behind closed doors, the cracks are beginning to grow. Senator Johnson says, quote, it's not going to pass the Senate. It won't, unquote. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley has made a surprising plea to leave Medicaid alone, which I have to be honest, completely shocked me because he's one of the worst senators in the Senate, and that's really saying something. He wrote in a New York Times op-ed, quote, Medicaid serves well over 1 million residents of Missouri, the state I represent. As for Missouri, it is one of 40 Medicaid expansion states because our voters wanted it that way. In 2020, the same year Donald carried the Missouri popular vote by a decisive margin, voters mandated that the state expand Medicaid coverage to working class individuals unable to afford health care elsewhere, unquote. Wow, look at Josh Hawley respecting the will of the voter. I did not see that coming. Anyway, Hawley, who, by the way, is also an insurrectionist, is actually pretending to listen to his voters. Well, he actually is listening to them, but I think motives are important. I think it's very possible that he understands that his political future is at stake here. But this bill could actually get worse if some of the most unscrupulous Republicans get their way. You know, Republicans who are in states so red that there is literally nothing they can't do that will get their voters not to vote for them. Because nothing says freedom like letting your loved one die from untreated diabetes, for example. Regardless of what happens here, one thing Republicans cannot seem to agree on is just how aggressively they're willing to harm their own constituents. And that is a political calculation. For some of them, what really matters is pleasing Donald. For others, it's making sure their constituents aren't so angry with them that they don't get kicked out of office. However, either way, it is about them, not about the people they represent. And that's just completely on brand for the Republican Party. So, what's going on here? Well, this is not about anything Donnie had to say. He's a soulless ghoul. He's an unaccomplished loser, kind of like his dad, but, in many respects worse. And the only reason anybody is paying attention to him is because he's Donald's son and Donald's in the Oval Office. So what he has to say does not deserve our attention, although it is important to recognize that his vile comments are on brand for the fascist Republican Party. He's not going to be booted out simply because what he said is despicable. He will be championed by many people because of it. That aside, though, this is the moment for us to start connecting some dots. From Donnie's tweet to Donald's proposed cuts to cancer research to a budget being contemplated by the Republican Party that could devastate millions. That's the path we need to be following. Because this isn't about a cruel, despicable post. This is about an entire ideology of cruelty that, yes, is driven from the top down by people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, right? But it is embraced not just by elected Republicans, but by everybody who votes for them. It is an ideology, it is a culture, and it's exactly what they want for the future of America, even if it has a direct impact on people they love, and even if it has a direct impact on them. And if you think I'm overstating that case, I refer you back to COVID, when so many Republicans died because they were willing to listen to the lies of those in charge more than they were willing to listen to actual expertise. So this is a pattern. And we here at Mary Trump Media are going to call it out every single time. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating, because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.